Somewhere out there, right now, is a stock that's about to make someone rich. The question is whether either of us will ever know which one it is. You can almost feel it. If you just read enough, watched enough, found it before everyone else did. I believed that. I believed it hard enough to spend 3 weeks trying to prove I was smart enough to beat the market. I never found the stock, but I did discover the mistake I'd been making the entire time. And once I saw it, I realized I'd been asking the wrong question from the very beginning.
I used to think there was a version of me who bought NVIDIA. Not a lucky version, a smarter version. A version who read enough, noticed enough, worked hard enough to see it coming before everyone else did. I've believed some version of that my whole investing life. That if I studied hard enough, I could pick better stocks than the person next to me. That intelligence should beat averages. I still believed it 3 weeks ago. I don't believe it anymore. Here's how that happened. It started with a number. If I'd put $10,000 into NVIDIA in 2015, I'd have well over $1 million today. I did the math twice, because the first time I was sure I'd made a mistake. I hadn't. And the second I saw that number, a voice in my head said the same thing it always says. Why didn't I just buy that? Everyone knows NVIDIA won. Everyone knows Apple won. Amazon, Microsoft. It feels obvious now, like the answer was sitting there in plain sight the whole time, and I just wasn't paying attention. So I went looking for the version of me who should have seen it. I pulled up what people were actually saying about NVIDIA back in 2015. Not what I remember. What was actually written, at the time, by people paid to know. And it wasn't obvious. It was a graphics card company most people associated with video games, trading at a price analysts openly debated, in a sea of a few thousand other public companies also promising the future. So I made a list. Companies that looked exactly as promising as NVIDIA did back then. Same kind of buzz. Same kind of, this could be the next big thing. Most of them are gone now. Not down. Gone. Delisted. Acquired for pennies. Quietly forgotten. Nobody makes a video about those. So I tried something a little unfair to myself. I went back and counted. If I'd actually put real money behind every company that looked exactly as promising as NVIDIA back then, spread evenly across all of them, how would that portfolio have done? Fine. Better than doing nothing. Nowhere close to what buying only NVIDIA would have done. Because the average of looked like a winner isn't the winner. It's just the average. The one spectacular result I keep replaying in my head was sitting inside a pile of ordinary, forgettable ones the whole time. I only remember the pile because of the one name that survived it. And that's when it landed. The winners are obvious, after they've already won. I wasn't smarter than 2015. I just have 2026 answer key. Hindsight isn't insight, it just feels exactly like it. Okay, fine. I can't spot the winner in advance by memory, but that's not really my plan anyway. My plan is research. Real research, hours of it. So I tried it. I picked a company and gave it an honest, full afternoon. Read the earnings report line by line. Pulled the balance sheet. Read every analyst note I could find. Built a little valuation model on a legal pad, the way I imagined a professional would. 4 hours in, I had a real opinion. I felt good about it. I felt like I'd earned an edge. Then I asked myself a question I probably should have asked at the start. Who else read this exact report today? And the honest answer was, everyone who might actually move the price. Hedge funds with teams whose entire job is this one earnings report. Algorithms that read it and trade on it in the time it takes me to open the PDF. Pension funds with the same numbers I have. Full-time analysts who do this every single day, not for one afternoon. I wasn't competing with other people like me. I was competing with professionals who'd already finished my homework before I woke up. That one stung a little. Not because it was surprising exactly, more because I'd never actually said it out loud to myself before. I always pictured my competition as some other guy on the internet with a hot take. It's not him. It's an entire industry with a head start measured in milliseconds. I told myself, okay, fine, but insiders don't get to trade freely either. There are laws about that, which is true. And it made me feel a little better for about 10 minutes until I remembered that legally restricted and informationally equal to me are not the same thing. The rules limit when an insider can trade. They don't erase what an insider already knows walking into the room. I don't get either version of that head start. So I tried the test one more time on a company I actually know something about from my own life, a retailer I'd shopped at for years. Surely there I'd have an edge nobody else has. I didn't. Whatever I'd noticed walking through that store, an analyst covering that stock had already noticed, quantified, and published a note about months earlier. So research doesn't give me an edge over the market. It gives me the privilege of arriving at the same conclusion everyone else already priced in. Fine, I thought. That's why everyone says just buy an index fund. Buy the S&P 500, stop trying to be clever. I was ready to accept that as the boring, responsible answer and move on. Except I realized I'd never actually asked what I was agreeing to. What is the S&P 500 actually? I always pictured it as a fixed list. 500 companies, locked in, a permanent monument to American business. You buy the fund, you own the monument. So I looked up how it actually works. It's not fixed at all. Companies get added, companies get removed. There's a committee that reviews it, and when a company stops meeting the bar, market value drops too far, it gets acquired, it goes bankrupt, it just stops being one of the biggest and best, it gets cut, and something else takes its place. I found a company that used to be one of the biggest names in that index. Household name. Everyone owned it without knowing they owned it. It got removed years ago. I looked up what happened to it after that. It's barely a fraction of what it once was. I wanted to be fair to the idea, so I went looking for a counterexample on purpose. A company that got cut and then actually came back. And I found one. A company that got removed, spent years rebuilding, and eventually earned its way back in, which almost talked me out of the whole thing, almost. Except that's not a flaw in the system. That's the system working exactly as designed twice. It cut a loser when it was losing. It re-added a winner once it started winning again. Either way, I would have been holding whichever one was actually earning its place, without ever having to decide that myself. The index didn't wait around to find out who'd recover and who wouldn't. It moved on and replaced the loser with whatever was winning instead. And it was willing to let a company back in the moment it deserved it. That's not a museum of 500 great companies. That's an engine. I sat with that for a second, because it kept rearranging itself the more I looked at it. This isn't a snapshot. It's a process. A constantly updating machine that fires its worst performers and hires its best ones, automatically, without asking anyone's permission, including mine. I thought I was buying 500 companies. I wasn't. I was buying a system that quietly replaces failure with success. I put my pen down after I wrote that line, because it didn't feel like something I figured out. It felt like something that had been true the entire time, and I was just the last one to notice. Okay, new plan. If the index is that good, and I still want to be involved, what if I just build my own version of it? Pick the best companies myself instead of letting a committee do it. So I did. I grabbed a legal pad and started writing down what I actually believed were the best companies in the world. Not hot picks. Just genuinely the best. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Google, Meta. I kept going. Costco, Visa, Eli Lilly, Berkshire Hathaway. I stopped and looked at the list. Something about it felt familiar in a way I couldn't place, so I pulled up the index's own largest holdings, side by side with my list. They were almost the same list. I hadn't picked 10 independent stocks. I'd picked most of the index's own top holdings, by hand, thinking I was doing something different. I laughed out loud at my kitchen table, alone, which is not a normal thing to do over a spreadsheet. I kept adding names anyway just to see what would happen. 20 stocks, 30. Each one still, in my head, the best. And with every stock I added, my homemade portfolio kept drifting closer and closer to looking exactly like the thing I was supposedly too smart to just buy. I wasn't beating the index, I was rebuilding it. One stock at a time. Slower. And with extra fees. There's actual math behind why that happens. Past a certain number of holdings, adding more good companies barely changes your risk or your return, because you've already captured most of what diversification has to offer. But I didn't need the math to feel it. I felt it happen, one ticker at a time, on my own legal pad. So if it's not stock selection that separates people who do well from people who don't, what is it? I used to assume the whole game was picking the wrong stock, that the danger was choosing badly, so I looked at what actually destroys people's returns. And it mostly wasn't that. It was what they did after they bought the right thing, selling during a crash right when the price is lowest, because it feels unbearable to keep watching it fall. Buying into hype at the top because everyone else is, and the fear of missing out is louder than any spreadsheet. Trading constantly, checking constantly, chasing whatever just went up. Even something as unglamorous as taxes. Selling and rebuying often enough that a chunk of every gain quietly leaks out before it ever compounds. There's actual research on this, not just my own account. The studies that track it call it the behavior gap. The difference between what the market itself returned over a period and what the average investor in that same market actually walked away with. It's not a small gap. Investors on average earn meaningfully less than the funds they're invested in, year after year, decade after decade. Not because they picked worse funds, but because of when they got in and when they panicked out. Same fund, worse outcome. Just from flinching at a different moment than the chart did. I pulled up my own account. I wasn't planning to. I just wanted to check something else, and I ended up scrolling further back than I meant to. There it was. A stock I bought because everyone was talking about it. A stock I sold 2 months later at a loss because it dropped and I panicked. That wasn't a bad pick. That was bad behavior wearing a bad pick's clothes. The market usually isn't what destroys returns. People do. I sat with that one longer than I expected to. It's a strange kind of humbling Not I made a mistake, but the mistake was never really about the stock at all. So where does that leave individual stocks? Is the answer that nobody should ever buy one? That felt too clean, too tidy an ending for something this messy. So I looked for the exceptions, and they exist. A business owner buying stock in the industry he's spent 20 years actually inside of, with real, earned knowledge nobody hands you from a spreadsheet. Someone with genuine, specific expertise, making a concentrated bet inside that expertise. Someone setting aside a small, deliberate slice of their money. I've heard people land anywhere around 5 to 10%. Money they've already decided they can afford to lose entirely. For the excitement of picking, kept completely separate from the money they actually need to retire on. The line isn't never. The line is whether losing that slice would change anything about your actual life. If the answer is no, it's entertainment with real money attached, and that's fine. If the answer is yes, it was never really a side bet. Individual stocks aren't wrong. Confusing them with your retirement plan is. That felt like the actual answer, not never pick stocks. Just know which game you're playing. And don't let one quietly disguise itself as the other. But even that didn't feel like the whole thing. Because underneath all of it, I kept asking myself the same question over and over in different clothes. Why did I want to pick the winning stock so badly in the first place? It wasn't really about the money. Not entirely. It was about being the one who saw it first. Who was right when other people weren't. There's a very specific feeling in getting to say I knew about that one. Before it happened, that feeling is worth something to people. Maybe worth more than the returns. People don't just buy stocks. They buy the feeling of being smarter than average. They buy a story they get to tell. Control in a place that mostly doesn't offer any. Excitement. Hope. Something to check on their phone that isn't just a number going sideways. I get it, honestly. I wanted that too. That's exactly why this took me 3 weeks instead of an afternoon. So the real question was never individual stocks or index funds. The real question was, am I trying to build wealth or am I trying to prove I'm smarter than the market? Those turned out to be 2 completely different goals, wearing the same outfit. I spent weeks trying to figure out which stocks would beat the market. The market answered a different question instead. I thought investing rewarded the person who could predict the future, the one who saw it coming, who called it first, who was right before everyone else was. Instead, it rewarded something much quieter. The person who stayed in it, who let the system do what it already does, quietly replacing failure with success year after year, long enough that they stopped needing to predict anything at all. I started this wanting to be the person who called it. I think I'd rather just be in it.